Hello, hello. I'm so excited, everyone. Happy New Year. Hi, Faisal. Mississauga, Ontario. So exciting. Yes, everyone. Put for me in the chat where you're tuning from. Let us see who is watching from around the world. I am so freaking excited to share with you this amazing new model that I've developed to help you find your ideal role in 2026 and position yourself for 150,000 to 300,000 roles and beyond. I got clients who make even more than 300,000. So let me know in the chat where you're tuning from and what is your biggest frustration when it comes to landing a role that is in your highest potential. Put that down for me in the chat. I'm so excited to cover this with you. The more you share, the more you're going to learn, and this will help me tailor this to all of your needs. Okay, wonderful. I know that I'm early. We got 1 minute left. For those of you who are regulars to my lives, I always like to come early just to make sure that everything is working. Okay. We are going to get started in a couple of minutes. We got the numbers going up. More people joining. I am so excited. If you're just joining, let me know in the chat where you're tuning from. Please make this, easier for me because it's so hard to actually talk to a screen and not see faces. So I'd love it if you all participate so that I can give you my very best. So if you haven't shared with me yet, put for me in the chat where you're tuning from and what is your biggest frustration when it comes to landing your ideal role. Damon, how's it going? Ohio. I bet it's cold there. Is there ever a time when you should start over? Oh man, we are so gonna cover that. Such an excellent question, Greg. I love it. Okay, we got 1 minute left. All right, I'm just gonna get into it. So today we're gonna talk about finding your ideal role in 2026 and how to position yourself for 150,000 to 300,000 roles. And I'm going to get my water at the same time. So friends, I've been doing this for 6 years and I have iterated on my model so many times. I've helped more than 1,000 professionals. And in 2026, I'm excited to share with you the latest and the greatest based on the market trends and what's going on. Okay, so this is the model that I've been talking about. It's called the Career Transformation System. And the purpose of this model is threefold. One, to help you attract opportunities that you're excited about. Who here is in a role that's not exciting? Or who here has been trying to look for other opportunities, but they're so ho-hum that it just doesn't give you the motivation to want to leave your current role? Plop for me in the chat if that is you. I'm curious. The second part of the model is selling yourself confidently, because we all know it's not enough to attract the right opportunities. In order to convert them into offers, you need to be able to sell yourself confidently. So who here experiences this? You show up to the interview and you freeze, you get nervous, you ramble, you come out of it and you're like, shoot, I wish I said the right thing. I wish I said it differently. Who here ever experiences that? And would it be nice to be like my client Rashid, where he's notified that he is moving on to the next round for a role at a level that he's never achieved before in his life? Wouldn't you want that for yourself? Wouldn't that be exciting? I don't know about you, but I'm a very competitive person. So I love, winning. And the third part of the system is obviously to deliver meaningful work, because it's not enough to attract opportunities you're excited about. Sometimes they seem exciting on paper, But when you actually do the work or you get the role, it turns out to be completely different than what you expected. And so, wouldn't it be nice for you to be like my client, Dana, who ended up as a CPO in a clean tech company, which is a pivot she made from financial services, doing meaningful work because she cares about the environment? What about if you've been doing this so much in so many interviews that it feels just repetitive now? Oh my goodness, I hear you. It feels like you're just going through the motions. That is an awesome question, and we are definitely going to cover that. Okay, so you are in the right place if you are an accomplished leader, if you believe in yourself, and you know that you're being undervalued, and you want to increase your salary by as much as $100,000. Yes, that is a number that many of my clients have been able to add to their previous six-figure salary. I'm not saying that I'm guaranteeing every single person here to achieve that number, but that is what is possible for you. Some of you might be $50,000 short too, which is still a significant amount, right? And so this is what we're focusing on today to make sure that you're getting the highest possible increase in your salary as you go to these interviews. Now, why is that important for you all? I mean, at the end of the day, we're not just showing up to work just to, be workhorses. We show up to work because we want to create financial freedom for ourselves. We want to be able to live a life that we want to live and have that freedom. We want to be able to grow in our career because I know this as a high achiever myself. I get bored easily if I'm not feeling challenged, if I'm not growing, if I'm moving up. And for every person, moving up is different, right? Some of you moving up meaning your next level is director, your next level is VP. Some of you are happy with being a senior individual contributor, but you want to take on more challenges and make a greater impact. And the third thing, in terms of why this is important, is you want to get recognition. Who here feels that it is important for you to feel recognized in your current organization? To be told thank you when you deliver on an initiative that actually has been successful, to get a salary increase, to get promoted, right? These are all important things. So I'm actually curious, put down for me in the chat, which of these three things is the most important for you? Freedom, growth, or recognition? I'm curious. Let me know. Growth. Definitely. Okay, I'm seeing more growth. Wow, such high achievers. I love it. I mean, it would be nice to have all three, right? Okay. So why did I create this system? I want to tell you why. A little bit about me. I spent more than 34 years of my life feeling miserable. And what I mean by that is when I was 17, my father threw a can of car oil at me and left a wall dent. So I decided to move to Canada from where I was originally from and born, which is Bahrain. And I came here by myself with no network, just two suitcases. And I spent 15 years of my career in the corporate world, climbing up the ladder, working at Fortune 500 organizations, leading business transformations up to 1 billion. And I just wasn't happy. I've been in many toxic environments that impacted my health to the point that I lost half of my pancreas. And I ended up quitting over text at some point, actually 2017. I realized that I was just not happy. And there is this backstory behind why I quit, but I'll leave it for another time because I want to get into the material. What I'll say is I discovered my bigger purpose, which was that my sweet spot is to help undervalued leaders find roles that are in their sweet spot because I empathize with everything that all of you go through. Now, what I ended up doing is I transferred more than 15 years of leading 1 billion plus transformation initiatives If you are familiar with, Agile, I was an enterprise Agile coach. I've worn the product hat. I've worn many hats, and I worked alongside, leaders to implement change initiatives and to release major platforms that had a great impact. And so I took all of that knowledge of how businesses work, how to navigate change, how to work with individuals and teams, and knowing how to place them at organizations. And I transferred it at the individual level, helping more than 1,000 people transform their career and, frankly, their life. Okay, so these are just some examples that of clients that I've helped. So one of my clients did not have a degree. He went from being a truck driver to an agile mentor at a gaming company in Portugal, moved from US to Portugal. Second client, she was a doctor from Nigeria, and she had no tech or North American experience. She pivoted into a product leadership role. Another client who landed at Amazon while still in Mexico into a senior product manager role without ever having the title. And back to that question that was asked, without starting over. I do pay attention to the comments. So, motivation for you all to engage. Another client of mine had more than 18 years of experience at the same company. And I was able to help her find a more senior role also without starting over. Another client of mine got promoted and landed a better offer as a director. He was constantly being promised that he would get a promotion, but they just keep promising and telling him to write his job description. And he got fed up. And so he decided to work with me, and he got the promotion and actually also left the organization for an even better role. Another client of mine, she was at the same company for 16 years. I call those type of clients lifers. You're a lifer if you've been in the same organization, I will say, for more than 6 years in this day and age. Helped her get promoted externally. She was a bit hesitant because of the market conditions, and she thought that she should target roles below director level. And she ended up being externally promoted to a VP outside of a previous title. This is my little friend, Moose, and he wants to deliver the presentation with me. Okay, so lots and lots of different clients that I've helped land different levels and progress and achieve that freedom and growth and recognition, and pivot into different industries, like my client Elisa, who went from nonprofit to Meta with no tech experience. And despite all of these successes and being invited to speak, I ended up going through a life transition myself, where I was in your exact, some of you are thinking about that, in your shoes, where I was questioning whether I need to burn it all down, whether I need to start over, whether I need to completely pivot. I find that when people go through life transitions, whether it is having children, whether it is, let's say, going through a divorce or a breakup or an illness or a death in their family, it obviously impacts you. And you start questioning yourself, you start losing clarity, and you start asking yourself, am I burnt out? Am I just bored? Do I need to pivot completely? Should I burn it all down and start over? And what I've learned after going through this experience myself is it's very important to not revolve your life around your career. It should be the other way around. That's what's important. And so, in 2024, I made a huge announcement about quitting my career coaching practice. And I decided to take a break, and I became a fractional CMO at an organization. I was brilliant at working with a founder and helping him with his messaging, his marketing, his ability to communicate, ability to attract the right clients. But I missed working with people at the individual level and helping them design their careers, because I had built so much mastery in that. I've developed curriculums that I've licensed. I've helped thousands of people. I've done, a lot of speaking engagements. And, I just kept hiring a lot of coaches to help me figure out what I should do next with my career. And so here's what happened. Every single one of them got frustrated with me. They said the same thing. This is not my decision. This is yours. You need to decide. You need to pick a lane. Your niche is your decision. And no matter how many client stories I share to help them understand what I do so that they can translate my experience into my next career move, they tried to pigeonhole me into a title. And they never understood what it is that I do. They'd ask me questions like, so what, you're like a placement agency? So you're like a recruiter? So you're like a life coach? The more I repeated myself to them, the more I felt misunderstood and the more I lost my confidence. And so here's what happened in December 2024. I had past clients reach out to me with a lot of wins. Every single one of them said the same thing. It all came down to the same thing. You helped me get clear on my career sweet spot, my unique value, the DNA of companies and work that would maximize my pay and fulfillment. You gave me a decision-making framework and you listened with patience. You helped me see what I wouldn't see on my own. And that's when it clicked. I didn't need to pivot. I didn't need to burn it all down. I just needed to get clear on my career sweet spot. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. So here's what we're trying to solve here. On the left-hand side, you can see the hiring team. And a lot of times, how many of you have experienced this when you're having a conversation with one of the hiring team members, whether it's a recruiter or hiring manager, and you realize that they don't even know what they want? They're unclear about what they want in a person to place them in a role. Anyone experience that? A lot of you might see that even in the way that job postings are written, right? Let me know in the chat if you've ever experienced that. On the right-hand side is you. You're the candidate. And a lot of what I see is that many professionals are unclear about the value that they bring to the table. You know you're great, but you just don't know how to articulate it and describe it. And so here's what happens. There is a huge clash. And what happens from the hiring team, side is resistance towards hiring you. They're skeptical. They don't know if you can do the role. Now, on the right-hand side, what happens is lack of confidence. When you see that resistance from them, that starts impacting your confidence. And so you end up settling for lower pay roles, for more junior roles. You start questioning if there's something wrong with you. Maybe you even blame it on the market, right? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you can control, okay? And how you can control this is by creating bulletproof level of confidence about your genius, your value, and the positioning of what you do. In order to make the effort of unpacking that and packaging it so that it's clear to the hiring manager. How does that sound to everyone? Do we have a deal? At the end of the day, we're not giving up. What is our choice, right? We can just give up and just say the market is bad, or we can control what we can control. Okay, so yes. You know what? We'll talk about that too in terms of the budgets. They will make a budget if they see the value. That's the bottom line. All right, so here is the model. I'm going to unpack it. So the sweet spot in the middle is to target a pay bump, whether it's $100,000, whatever that number is for you, right? And it's got to be a role that you're excited about, that's in your sweet spot. Now, why is that important? Is because you want to create freedom for yourself. You got bills to pay. You don't want to be at the mercy of a horrible organization and feel trapped there. You want options, right? So how we create those options is that we need to attract more exciting opportunities to give us the incentive to aim higher. And the other aspect to create that freedom so that you're not trapped in a terrible career situation, whether it's a toxic environment, a bad boss, or frankly, a role that is too junior for you, you need to be able to sell yourself confidently. Now, when it comes to attracting exciting opportunities, there are 3 things that I teach my clients. One of them is clear positioning. And we'll talk about what that means shortly, okay? The second one is being able to translate your experience into the right role. The third one is building a leadership brand. Make sense so far? All right. So, the other aspect of creating that freedom is obviously selling yourself confidently. And how you do that is by becoming a great storyteller, having that executive presence, so that when you're talking to executives, they don't see you as someone who's hesitating and not confident, someone who can do the role. And you need to be able to negotiate your salary effectively. Now, what happens if you don't sell yourself confidently? You get lowballed offers. And when you don't attract the right opportunities, what happens? Who can tell me? You get no interviews. Okay. Now, the third aspect, or the second aspect, is a lot of you want to get recognition. You want to get promoted. You want to get more exciting, projects at work. So how do we do that? You need to obviously sell yourself confidently because your work is not going to speak for itself. How many of you have been in organizations where someone else got promoted, where you finally delivered on the business outcomes, but in the end, you did not get that raise? I had someone who reached out to me who shared with me that the company increased her salary by only $5,000 after 3 years, and only when she said that she was leaving. Isn't that nuts? And that was after she delivered on an incredible initiative. So when you're not, your work is not going to speak for itself, and you need to be able to sell yourself confidently. And at the same time, if you're not working in your area of mastery, if you're not working in an area that matches what you're really good at and what you're skilled at, then obviously you're not going to be motivated to do great work. Okay? So that's why we need to be in a role that allows us to do meaningful work. And in order to deliver meaningful work, one of the tools that I give my clients is a 90-day plan so that they can create that great impression. I help them overcome imposter syndrome, and I help them work within their career sweet spot. Okay, now what happens if you're not doing work that fills your cup? If you're not doing work that is exciting, you end up burning out. And I will tell you all that a huge percentage of high achievers, they don't burn out necessarily because they're working a lot of hours. I mean, that could contribute to it, especially if it's an ungrateful organization that's disorganized and has a lot of politics. But it can also be if the work is not bringing you joy for many reasons. All right, so this is the entire model. Now, if I sat here and I covered every single thing, because these are 9 different pieces, we'd be sitting here until tomorrow, because my program is a 4-month journey for people to actually implement this correctly and get the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover one piece for each of these components that is the most important and the most critical for you. Sounds good? Awesome. Okay, so I have a question for you all. Knowing that you're capable, knowing that you are a capable person and a high achiever, salary-wise, for your based on what you can bring to the table, do you feel that you are in the 3% or in the 97%? Do you feel like your salary is above average, that is exceptional and part of the 3%? Or do you feel that you are part of the 97%? Okay, I got a bunch of 97%. Okay, we got to change this. My question to you is, do you know how to get to the 3%? All right, so I'm getting silence, which means that you don't. And so this is what we're going to unpack. All right, so this is a model that I share with people when they get on my career diagnosis, which is a 15-minute call. And a lot of people, when they do this exercise with me, they get a ton of clarity in terms of what's blocking them. And so I'm going to do this quick exercise with you. And if you do want to do it with me individually, there is an option later to do that. I want you to think about where you are now and where you want to be a year from now. Okay, this is 2026. We got to change things. We can't be, in the same situation. I want you to be aspirational, right? And I want you to really stretch your thinking and think big. And Faisal, this is more about what you believe, because I'm counting on you as someone who is a high achiever and knows yourself to basically decide what you deserve, right? Okay. So a year from now, for you to be satisfied and kind of okay, how much would you want to add to your salary? Would it be like 10,000, 20,000? What is okay for you? Feel free to type that in the chat. What is ideal for you? For you to be absolutely happy. If I gave you a magic wand and I said nothing was standing in your way, where would you want to be in your salary? How much would you want to add? Would you want to add 50,000, 100,000? What would make you happy? If you think about all of your bills and commitments, investments, retirement fund, all of those things, how much would you want to add? Now, some of you might be in the not okay situation. And the not okay situation could be that, maybe your last raise was only 5,000, just like that client. Or maybe it's zero, right? So I want you to think of that number. All right. So here's how we can diagnose this for you guys to understand what you need to do and where you're at. Think about what we talked about, which is, in order for you to get that ideal role and hit those numbers that we talked about here, the first component is obviously you need to attract exciting opportunities. So green means that you're great at this. Yellow means it needs work. Red means you're not there yet. So here's the first question. How effectively can you translate your experience into a role that represents your full potential? How effectively can you translate your experience into a role that represents your full potential? So plop green if you are awesome at translating your experience, and as a result, your inbox is flooded with interview opportunities that you're excited about. Yellow if you feel it needs work. Red if you're not there yet. The second question is, how effective is your leadership brand in attracting opportunities at the 3% of the salary market? Green, yellow, or red? Do people perceive you? Do hiring managers perceive you at the right seniority level for the magnitude of what you've done? When you talk to a hiring manager, do they tell you that you're qualified for the role, or do they say, I don't think you're the right fit? Or even a recruiter, do recruiters contact you for more junior roles? Are they contacting you for roles at the right level? Put green, yellow, or red. Okay, so now the second one. Sell yourself confidently. How you know there are gaps? Here's the first question. Do people listen when you're in an interview? Does the interviewer listen to your story and look engaged, like they're not falling asleep? Or do you find yourself rambling? Red, green, or yellow? If you are rambling, you're definitely a red. If you ramble a lot in interviews. Are hiring managers saying to you after you interview, you're exactly what we've been looking for, you're going to hear from us soon? Or do they tell you, we'll let you know, we have a number of people that we need to interview? If you're hearing the second one a lot, then you're definitely a yellow or a red. The third one, are you getting offers or just hearing we're interviewing other people all the time? Okay. Now, let's go into the third and last bucket, delivering meaningful work. When you think about your ideal role, if we go back to your goal in 12 years from now where you're extremely happy, does it cause you imposter syndrome? If it causes you imposter syndrome, you definitely want to put a red. If you're somewhere in the middle, yellow. If you don't have imposter syndrome and you're very confident and you know that you can stretch yourself, then you can say green. The second question, does your ideal role align with the legacy that you want to leave behind? Sometimes I ask myself, what do I want to leave behind, right? In my career, what do I want to be known for? Does the work that I do match that? Do I get excited waking up in the morning? Now, does thinking about the role give you confidence, or does it scare you when you're going for that next level role? So green, yellow, or red? Okay. So I'm curious, based on this, who here had the most reds under attract exciting opportunities? Write down attract in the chat if you're finding that the area where you're most blocked is attract. If you're finding that the area that you're most blocked is sell yourself confidently, then just put sell in the chat. And if you're finding that the area that you're most blocked is delivering meaningful work, you can put in deliver. I'm very curious to see the numbers. We can just have a fun little survey later on. I'll email you all the results afterwards. Okay, so this model is going to answer these questions, and I shared with you that there are 9 parts of this model. I'm going to be talking about the 3 most critical ones since we only have 30 minutes left. The ones that I'm going to talk about is clear positioning in order to help you attract exciting opportunities, storytelling in order to help you sell yourself confidently, and then I'm also going to talk about overcoming imposter syndrome to help you grow as a leader and deliver meaningful work. All right, so clear positioning. I want to explain to you the concept of positioning. A lot of you think you have to start over, you need to completely burn everything down. You feel like you are actually pivoting when it really isn't pivoting. You don't need to do any of that. What you need to do is you need to get clear on your sweet spot, because positioning means knowing who you're uniquely equipped to serve, what problems you're built to solve, how to articulate your value so that you stop being invisible, and when to walk away because you have options. Positioning is not your title. So a lot of people get hung up on figuring out what title they should use to apply for roles, and that's not it. Okay, that's not what's going to differentiate you. The thing is, every organization, you can have the same role and an organization is going to call it something else. This is why people have a lot of challenge figuring out what to aim for. The other thing I wanted to say when it comes to positioning, I want you to understand this analogy. The picture on the left is bottled water. The picture on the right is a glass of water. Essentially, it is the same thing, but it is packaged differently and people perceive it differently. When you go to a restaurant and you get a beautiful, nice, expensive jar of glass and they pour the water for you, you have a different perception than when they just give you a glass of water. And so when you're doubting yourself and you're thinking, well, I should settle for a lower salary, that's because of how you're being perceived. Why do people pay more money for bottled water versus just get a glass of water, right? There are people who will, even in this day and age, who will go to a restaurant and say, no, I want sparkling water. So the key here is to find those people who are willing to pay for the expensive water versus settle for the people who just want a glass of water. Okay? So for me, what I realize is whether I want to call myself a career coach, a fractional CMO, a wizard, a unicorn, a dinosaur, what I enjoy doing, what's in my sweet spot is helping people drive their career rather than let organizations determine their fate for them. And how I do this is by helping their experience, helping them translate their experience and uncover their hidden genius, the genius that is hidden because they're not able to connect the dots on their own so that they can feel recognized and paid what they're worth. That's my value proposition. You see how that is different than me just saying career coach or whatever I want to call myself? That's what you need to do. Okay, so when you lean into your sweet spot, communicate it effectively to the right people, the ones who are going to pay for the fancy, expensive bottled water, you no longer have to chase. And you're not forced to be someone else in order to fit in. So I want to share with you one of the mistakes when it comes to positioning. I see a lot of people apply to a variety of roles at different levels to increase their chances. And I get it. You're A/B testing, you're trying, VP of product, you're trying SVP to see what, is gonna translate into an opportunity. Because the truth is, you're unsure what roles fit your experience. But what that does when you do that is it makes it really hard for a recruiter to understand what it is that you do. I just want you to imagine, just from a recruiter's perspective, someone looking at this profile, seeing all of these titles, they're just not sure what opportunity to talk to you about. And I get it. No one sat down with you, went through your entire experience, looked at your personality, your skills, your life story, and mapped out all the options out there for you. And so how we fix this is we define your sweet spot. Sweet spot is who you're uniquely equipped to serve, what problems you're built to solve, and what impact you want to make. It's not enough to know what problems you solve, because it's also important for you to understand what companies you thrive in. Some companies, they're not structured in a way that is aligned with your collaboration style. You might get along with a different type of people. And so we need to understand all of these components, not just one. And how we get clear on that, how I help my clients with this is I have a career archetype assessment where I take all of these inputs and I'm able to translate them into roles that are out there. That way, they're not wasting their time applying to roles that don't fit and then wondering why they're not attracting the right opportunities. So who you're uniquely equipped to solve is, think about customers that you're uniquely equipped to solve, right? Let us say, if you are building products for financial services industry versus an organization where you're building products for health, right? And then within these organizations, there are specific types of problems that you might solve. For example, the difference between a product person is you might solve the problem of, are we building the right product? And for someone who's, let's say, a program manager, we're solving the problem of, how do we get teams to collaborate effectively and not work in silos? So you see how I'm doing this? And that's how you determine what you niche down to, not the title. Titles don't really mean anything. So who you're uniquely equipped to solve, this is about understanding the DNA of the companies where you thrive, the types of leaders you work best with, the team dynamics that bring out your best work. Most people skip this step. Not every 200,000 role is created equal. You could land a 200,000 role and be miserable because the company culture doesn't fit you. The second thing is that what we talked about is the problems that you're built to solve. And I shared that already. And then the third one is the social impact. So, if you're working in a company that builds products that you don't believe in, then you're not going to want to do it. Or if you are working in a company that has a vision that doesn't align with yours, you're not going to be motivated either. So we have to think about all these different pieces, not just one, in order to make a holistic decision. And, the reason it's so hard to make that decision is because it's like you're inside the jar trying to look at outside the label. And what I help my clients do is be the outsider who can connect the dots for you. And that's how companies won't see you as expensive. They'll see you as premium when your value is articulated correctly. Okay, so the second thing that I want to talk about is storytelling so that you can sell yourself confidently. That way, you're not being lowballed. So, one of the mistakes that I see people make when they're selling themselves is they end up overwhelming recruiters and hiring managers with a lot of information. You want to share everything that you've done throughout your career. It's almost like providing a mass buffet experience. How many of you have been to a buffet where you're overwhelmed? You don't even know what to choose. So I want you to imagine the cognitive load that you're creating for a recruiter or hiring manager listening to what you've done. Instead of showcasing your 3 best dishes like an upscale restaurant. The other mistake that I see people making when they're selling themselves is they underestimate their greatness. So here's the thing. I call it unconscious competence. When you're so great at what you do, you take it for granted, it's hard for you to communicate it. And some of it might come from because of cultural, background. Maybe you were raised in a family that discouraged you from bragging, or maybe you've been told by a boss that your work wasn't good enough. So I want you to listen to what my client Stephanie shares in terms of why she was discounting herself when she was working with me. Struggle with is positioning themselves, finding their superpower. One of the big hurdles that I see a lot of leaders struggle with is positioning themselves, finding their superpower. I've always been passionate about that because I feel like if you're not clear on that, it's really hard to attract the right opportunities. What do you feel was the hardest thing for you when it comes to repositioning yourself? And how do you feel that I was able to help you overcome that?
Yeah, so the hardest thing for me, again, was knowing my value and what I could bring to the table and how I could help, a business continue to grow. I think that was the hardest for me because I saw myself as someone who, I've managed, 50 or so people and I was in that role, but I didn't feel confident because I think I allowed myself to get so caught up and be torn down. And so what you helped me to do is just realize my value. You help build us up just through the exercises and helping us to just better understand like what you bring to the table, like what you've been doing really can contribute to the overall growth of a company. and you do bring value, and don't discount yourself, right?
Yeah.
Remember, you bring a lot to the table. And I think I discounted myself, and you helped me to really open my eyes and see, wait a minute, I've done all this stuff. I can go to another company and do it again.
Okay, beautiful. So Stephanie and I worked together, and she landed a role in 2024. She went from director to VP level despite the market being bad, and this is one of the pieces of advice that she shares. Okay, the other thing about unconscious competence that I wanted to say is when you have a hard time articulating what you've done, you're also assuming that the recruiter already knows because you're like, well, that's part of the role. They should know that I can do this. They don't. And that's the thing. Okay, the other mistake that I wanted to share is that a lot of you blend in with generic chat GPT messaging. Some of you are using Claude or chat GPT to optimize your profiles, to build your resumes, which by the way is just like one of the small tactical things in this big 9 parts that I shared. And what ends up happening is that you blend in. You become like one of these movie posters. I want you to imagine a recruiter that's screening and looking at 100 resumes, and they keep seeing the same thing over and over and over again. And this is why you don't stand out, right? When they keep seeing seasoned product manager and launched a product from 0 to 1 versus the specifics. Okay, so I want to talk about telling your story. I know that it's hard because you're expected to sum up years of your experience in just 2 minutes. And it's really disappointing after putting in all this effort to hear, oh, we just went with another candidate. And what makes it very hard is not being able to connect the dots through your entire career. But when you do that, when you become a great storyteller, you communicate in a cohesive, engaging way. And that's what's going to make hiring managers notice you. And that's what's going to make you stand out. I want you to name one leader who isn't a great storyteller and doesn't have a story. You probably can't, right? And this is why storytelling is important. It's even helped clients that I've worked with who didn't have the title pivot into careers that they love. Like this, client who went from being a medical physician to a product leader. We were able to find her transferable experience. She was working, she ran her own clinic, and she actually worked on EHR stuff. Okay, but she just didn't have an official role as a product manager. So that's the magic. Now, a lot of you are trained, and lots of recruiters and mainstream career coaches out there tell you to quantify your impact, and so you end up throwing in numbers that don't make sense, are not believable. And I'll just be honest with you, recruiters sometimes think that you fake them. Things like, oh, I just reduced HR workload by 75%, or I just secured a 1 million 3-year contract. But you're not telling them how you did that. You're not telling them the story behind it. And here's the analogy that I give a lot of people is, would you work with a doctor who simply tells you that they had a 90% success rate, or a doctor that is so specific and relates what they've done to what you need? In my case, I went to a doctor who shared with me that he's treated a patient with a pancreatitis, 6-centimeter cyst, and that he was able to perform the surgery with minimal scars. Do you see the difference when it comes to selling value? One of the tools that I give my clients out of many is a story building system that creates that cohesive narrative. And it's very different than STAR or SOAR. Okay, the last component of the model is delivering meaningful work. And I know that a lot of you have imposter syndrome, which is why you have a hard time with selling yourself and attracting the right opportunities. And sometimes in your current roles too, you have that imposter syndrome, which keeps you from speaking up and asking for more and advocating for yourself. So when that happens, and your confidence keep getting suppressed because you're not getting the recognition at work, you end up trying too hard in interviews and over-explaining yourself for a role that's not even a fit. And that's really frustrating. And how you come across is definitely not someone with executive presence. You end up sounding like a car salesman. And so what you want to do instead is you want to position yourself as a guide. You want to position yourself as a trusted advisor. Not just someone who checks boxes and gets ghosted, not someone who struggles with conveying executive presence, but someone who is able to guide the interview. And how you do that is by thinking of yourself as the guide and not the hero. My client, Elisa, how she got that role at Meta and added, 6 figures to her previous 6-figure salary is by taking on a trusted advisor approach where she asked the right questions and she didn't jump into answering the questions. Because here's what happens. Have you ever been to a doctor who was quick to prescribe you medication versus a doctor who sat down with you, asked you questions? It's not about talking too much. It's about being a good listener, asking the right questions, and being strategic in your answers. So good doctors diagnose the problem and explain the importance of the problem. And that's why my client Heath went from not having a degree and being a truck driver to landing his dream role and moving from the US to Portugal. And I'm so jealous. I got to get all of my clients to invite me to wherever they end up because I keep seeing his Instagram full of like these amazing cafes. Okay, so leaders communicate with less words. Leaders communicate with conviction. Leaders communicate by listening more than speaking. And this is how they influence with charisma and not just logic. Remember, sometimes it's not just what you say. Sometimes it's how you make people feel. So each story needs to become a piece of evidence for you. You need to think about, what is the one thing that I want the hiring manager to know about me? How did I solve the problem better than anyone else? And what was the business outcome I achieved? So to fix these mistakes, we need to completely shift how we look at progressing in our career, whether it's landing a job or moving up. It's like the difference between a Toyota and a Ferrari. You're not a Toyota, my friends. You're high achievers. And, you're not a commodity. And so you got to act like that 3% versus the 97%. Because when you think about top leaders and executives who are successful, they don't go applying to 100 jobs and flail around, right? They're very strategic, just like how you build your products. You don't just throw a bunch of features at your users, right? You think about what are the right features? What is the minimal viable product? What are the features that's going to create the greatest ROI? Because the reality is every job, every industry, every business is oversaturated everywhere. So what are you going to do? Are you going to give up? You're not going to do anything about it? The reality is the only solution is getting better at communicating your unique value. Think about athletes. They have a very small chance of winning at the Olympics, but instead of giving up, they train, right? So I hope you found this helpful. You love my co-host? Yeah. And by the way, there we go. That's, the gift at the end of the presentation is you get to see him lick my face. All right, friends, if you found this helpful, here's something that I'm offering you for a limited time. I'm offering a free 15-minute career diagnosis. If you guys remember the exercise that we did towards the beginning of the presentation, I call it the traffic light exercise. Gosh, there's got to be a better way to go through these slides. But in the traffic light exercise, I asked you to rate yourself and to tell me if you're red, yellow, and green. If you want me to sit down with you and help you diagnose what exactly is standing in your way, right? Then that is something that I can offer you in my 15-minute call. My goal in this call is to simply diagnose you and to see if we are a fit working together as well, right? I'm more interested in finding high achievers who are a fit that I can help them than getting clients at the end of the day, because I practice what I preach and I love doing work with people who are like-minded and aligned. And if we're not a fit, you come out of that, career diagnosis with more clarity. So there's nothing to lose here and more to gain. Now, because my time is limited, you all know that I have, at this point, close to 46,000 followers. I can't do this for every single person. So I encourage you to jump on this opportunity, book it tonight. You're here, you're listening, you understand that this is something that you need to solve. You want your life to be different in 2026. Jump on this opportunity, click on this link, and book the free career diagnosis. Okay, so let me know in the chat if you have any questions. I know we have like 7 minutes left. I'd love to make sure that you guys are all clear on what I shared today, especially when it comes to the model. Anyone want to ask any questions? And if you don't have questions for now, you can always DM me later. And I'd love to also know what your biggest takeaway is. Okay, so if you enjoyed this presentation, please give it a like, just so that if there is someone out there who is struggling with this can watch it and it can help them. Thank you so much for this session. Great food for thought. Awesome. Awesome, Sarah. Excuse me. I'm glad that you enjoyed this. Okay, friends, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And as I mentioned, the career diagnosis slots are going to be open for the next couple of days. And then I'm just going to block off my calendar again. So definitely jump on this opportunity if you want me to diagnose your career and help you figure out what your blocks are. In fact, what I encourage you to do is go back to the presentation, find that slide, and then fill it out, and we can go over it during the call. Okay, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful night. Awesome. Thank you so much, Faisal. 2 Faisals today, Alvi and Zainadine. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dustin. Sudhir, thank you so much for your engagement and questions. Thank you, Greg and Sarah. Hope you, and you want the deck? Absolutely. Send me a DM if you want it. I might actually share with you guys the traffic light slide if that's helpful. All right, friends. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Priya. You guys know where to find me. Let's make 2026 a better year for you all. And high achievers always take advantage of opportunities. So I'm giving you a golden opportunity to take advantage of.